Welcome back to Debut Writers. We know it's been a little while, but we are both so excited to welcome you back to our fourth season of the show. In our first three seasons, we discussed the writing process, what you need to know before you start, and reaching that goal of completing your first draft.
I know you may think that the hard part is done, but now we are getting ready to really dig into the meat of what it takes to get your book published. In this season, we are going to be talking about the editing process from beta readers to hiring professional editors to getting your book ready to query. We are going to talk about all of it.
And something really special this season is we are going to be talking to industry professionals at all different phases of this process.
We will be talking to a first time author who's self publishing, kind of learning how she learned this whole process from scratch and she's doing it herself. We're going to be talking to a seasoned editor of a publishing company, a literary agent, and a previously senior acquiring editor for HarperCollins.
You do not want to miss out on this season, so make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and our podcast now live on Spotify and Amazon.
Yay! Okay, so let's get down to it. You wrote a book. Congratulations. I mean, that is really do take a moment to soak that in because that's such a feat. It takes so much out of you to finally finish that book. And I feel like I see all those posts where people are texting the end and they're like, I'm done. I'm finished. It's over. And I'm like, oh, you poor thing. It's just getting started.
Right. We're at the starting line now, so you
You've done
kind
all
of
the
need,
training. Yeah, that's a
yes.
good point. Yeah, you've done all the training, and now you're ready for the big meat. And so you've taken that first step to becoming an author. And I really want you to soak it in and say, I'm an author. I've written a book. I'm an author. Even if it's not published, feel like you can say that. And the next step in that process is really that editing process. And it's not one to be skipped at all.
No. Oh my goodness. I don't, whichever path you end up going down when it comes to your publishing journey, your book has to be edited. Like, please, 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 please do not skip over this. Like Anne said, it's a huge accomplishment, and you can be very, very proud of the fact that you did finish that book, that you wrote the whole thing. But now it needs to be edited, and it needs to be edited beyond just you.
Yes, and not your mother-in-law who's an English teacher. Even though my mother-in-law who was an English teacher is fabulous, and she is one of my beta readers, and she gives fabulous feedback. You've got to hire a professional in the industry, and this is why on that very first episode when we're talking about being realistic as an author and a writer and wanting to get published, you do need to have put money aside for this point in time. Yes, when you work with a publisher, editing will be done, but not to this intensity and not to this level. No, ever, I have yet to talk to a writer who said, I sent my first draft unedited and I got representation. I have yet to talk to that author.
Goodness, I don't think that author exists. And if they do, they can feel free to email me and
Yes,
say,
and you are a
and
unicorn. You are a unicorn.
you are,
Um,
and we love that for you.
yes, one of the agents we're going to be talking to this season, that is something she really dives into with us is why it is so incredibly important for an author to send such a tight, well edited, well written manuscript to her. And it'll be very interesting because I know a lot of writers that I talk to, they're like, if I'm going with a literary agents and I'm going with a traditional publisher, they're going to do all that for me. And it's like, no, they're not. Like, that is a big myth. It's a big misconception. They are not going to do all that for you. And so, the biggest thing that I think an author can do is once you've written that story, is sit back and take a mind break because you have been knee deep in this story for months, years, however long it took you to write it. Take that time, take a break. And while you're taking a break from your story, it is a good time to send your your story to your mom, to your best friend, to your neighbor, whoever it is that reads your book, that's your first reader and they give you great friendly feedback. That's a good time to send your book to them. I always send it to my mom, but I tell her, I'm like, please don't point out the thousand grammatical errors I know. All the misspelled words. I got it.
Yeah,
I
that's
will
not the
fix
purpose
those.
of
I
this.
Yeah, I'm like, I need plot holes, Mom. I need character problems. I need to, when did you get tired of reading? When did you increase the reading? Like, because I'll ask her, I'm like, hey, did you start reading? She's like, oh, yeah, it's so good. I'm really excited. A couple weeks later, hey, are you still reading? She's like, oh, I put it down and I just got distracted. I'm like, you put it down for a reason, though. So, like, mark where you put the book down, why you stopped reading. Like, these beta readers really, really help you understand what the traditional reader out there is going to think as they're reading your book. And that's so important in that first stage of editing.
But I think we should touch on too that mindset that you're talking about is going into this, you have to have that mindset to be open to that feedback. We completely understand that you have spent all this time with these characters or this world or this story that you've created and you're probably very 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 attached to it, and that's supernatural. But you also need to know that beta readers and other editors ultimately they're able to bring a new perspective to your story. They're able to see things that are hard to see when you're knee deep in that story or have been knee deep in that story. And so mindset to me is probably the biggest thing the authors that I've worked with when it comes to the editing phase and beta readers and everything, where they really have a bit of a block because um, if it's their first book, they're so high on that accomplishment, and they really can't see past those rose-colored glasses because they have done this, and it's not to discredit that goal or that achievement and that milestone, but you do really have to be open to a lot of feedback and know too that anyone in this professional space or even just beta readers that you're reaching out to, they know what they're doing by being a beta reader, and if they're a professional editor, they know what they're doing too, and they're there to make your story, your book, whatever it is, that much better. But you need to be open to that feedback. And I think to like one author that I wrote with, where initially there was some hesitation when it came to some of the editing with his, and now, I mean, when looking back on the additional months of editing that he put in, he's like, that story's better, it's
Mhm.
hands down so much better, and I'm so glad that we spent that time and really dug into the details. But it's important to have that mindset, and I think what you're saying about taking that break, that can help a lot with that as well.
You also have to think like at the end of the day, and we get to this kind of when we get to that marketing and business season, is you're you're writing a book and it's your baby and people are like, this was a labor of love, and all that stuff. And yes, it is. It's your heart and soul in this book for a lot of people, especially with your first one. You've got to have a lot of passion behind that first book to commit to it. But you're putting together a product and you have to be able to sell that product. And if the person you're selling it to, the reader, isn't connecting with it for some reason or whatever, you need to know that before you put that product out there because, unfortunately, once you put it out there, it's kind of said and done and you can't really take a lot back. So it's really important to get this feedback. It's probably one of the most important stages as we go through this whole process.
I completely agree. And I would say too, that's why a lot of people they don't always end up publishing their first book, or they come back to it after they've had a couple out there. Like I think back to Jenny Meyer Sane who
I
talks
was thinking
about
the same
that.
one.
Yeah, like that's always stuck with me, that story about how the first book that she wrote wasn't the first book that she got published. And but would she be where she is today if she hadn't put together that story initially? Like maybe not. And so I think that that's a really really powerful like lesson for a lot of writers, especially debut writers and new writers. But it's also, if you kind of embrace this process, like it can be a lot of fun at the same time because your story can really evolve, and to see where it leads to that day that you type the end the first time and you grab a diet coke or a glass of wine and you cheers to yourself because you're like, I did it. And this is great. But then to actually see, months down the road where it is after you've gotten some great feedback and after you've worked with some editors, I think it can be really exciting. And to your point, you're perfecting it for that product. If you want to be a career author, that has to be in the back of your mind as well. It doesn't diminish your passion or the love that you have for the story. But if you want to go down any of these publishing paths, you have to have that in the back of your mind.
And I think we talk about that in the first series about what you need to know before you start writing a book. And we talk about your target audience. We talk about, who are you writing to? Why are you writing to them? And then why are you the person to write this book? So here again, we kind of go back into that and play into that to say, as you're going through that editing process. So like when you're searching for those beta readers, if your best friend loves romance and you are writing horror, she might not be the best person to like ask to read your book.
No, I do think it's great if you have some friends that are readers because like you were talking about with your mom, you can be like, "Hey, look for plot holes. Where was the pacing falling flat a little bit for you?" Having friends that are readers is great and they're an awesome place to start to get some of that initial feedback before you're bringing on any sort of editor. But if you're able to find people that enjoy or like the genre that you're writing to, then it's going to improve your edits that much more because they know what they're looking for. They know how that genre typically reads. It's only going to help you in this entire process.
Yes, and that will be even more important when you go to hire an editor. And we'll talk about that this season too, like vetting an editor and what's going to be the best fit. Not only do you have to feel like you can create a relationship with this editor because you are going to work with them a lot and put a lot of trust into them with your book, you need to find somebody that's in that space because again, they are going to know how is that genre written? What is the popular in this genre? What do readers expect in this genre? So it's like that's going to be a really important thing as well too.
Absolutely. And so all that to say too, I know you're going to kind of get into this with some of their guests, but there are like this process probably looks just a little bit different if you're going to self-publish versus if you are looking to query and either go hybrid or traditional. So I know you'll dig into that a little bit more, but what would you say your initial experience or recommendations would be like for the different publishing paths for writers?
So I would say if you want to go the traditional route, you want to get a literary agent and you want to work with a top publishing company in the traditional sense, that would require maybe potentially not a professionally paid for edit. Could not hurt you for sure. If you're getting a lot of rejections from agents and it's not coming to fruition for you, try to hire a professional editor and see if that helps. And try to hire a professional to help with your query letter. That could really help as well too. If you're getting past the query letter but you're not getting past a full request, look at that editor and say, "Hey, I need an editor to kind of help me come in because there's something wrong with my book." If you're not getting past that query phase, you might want to reach out and have somebody help you with your query professionally because there's something wrong with the query. And we will, again, when we get into the publishing series, we will really deep dive into queries because that's a whole nother beast. But you definitely can't skip the beta reader part. And a lot of agents will ask you that. Who else has read this book? What is some of the feedback you've gotten on your book? When you have that call with an agent, they are going to expect you to not be the only pair of eyes on this book. So I actually, when I was trying to publish my first book, Green as All Get Out, I went and met with an agent at a literary event here locally. And I sat down and I showed her my stuff. And looking back now, I am so embarrassed because she was just like, I remember she didn't even look 5 seconds at what I gave her. And she folded it all together and she was like, "Does anybody know you're a writer?" I was like, no. And she was like, "Yeah, so I'm gonna need you to like phone a friend, find a community." Like, and she was
Tell
so nice.
someone.
Like, I can read through the lines of like what she was trying to tell me. And she was basically trying to tell me I had no idea what I was doing. And my book was nowhere near ready to present to an agent, and professionally. You've got to think of it as potentially like a job interview. You want to be qualified for that job before you walk in. And when you walk into that job interview, you really want to showcase the best qualities and what really quantifies you for that position most. If you don't have all those pieces together, then you need to get those pieces before you ever even start going down the professional traditional path. So that right there is, maybe you don't have to pay for a high level professional edit, but you definitely need to have other people involved, critique partners, get part of a writing community and share it, have people read it that really enjoy that genre, that can give you feedback. I know it's time consuming. This is the part that I get really frustrated with, because I'm ready to just get it out. I'm ready to like start querying agents and like, let's go. But you only get one chance with these agents. So you really have to put your best foot forward. And I would, even though it's time consuming, I would not recommend skipping that step at all. So that, all that being said, the next phase would be if you're going with a hybrid publishing company. Imperative to have a professionally hired editor work with you prior to working with a hybrid company, only because having been in that hybrid space for a really long time now, as professionally working with them, they do not edit your work the same way. They will give you advice, they'll give you editorial suggestions, editorial reviews, but it is not the same as hiring a professional editor to like really deep dive into your book. And you'll be doing your book a disservice. You'll pay all this money, you'll finally get published, and then it will fall flat and you won't understand, and it will be because you never had it like fully professionally edited. Now, there are some hybrid companies, they're a lot more expensive, and it's because they do offer that. They do offer professional editing during that process. So that's the whole other thing that we get into when we talk about the different pathways in publishing is when you're working with a company like a hybrid company, what the big important thing it's going to, the editing is what's different between all these companies. So that's what you really have to figure out. And so I just suggest always, before you even want to go down that path, get it professionally edited, you know. And definitely also too for your peace of mind, because working in that hybrid space, so many authors are like, well, do you call everybody? Does everybody get the call? Do you just publish anybody? And I'm like, like you're not supposed to. Like hybrid companies are supposed to be vetting their authors. They're not supposed to be taking everybody. But there are some companies out there that will take lesser manuscripts because they want to like, publish more. And you, to prevent being weary of that and to being like worried about that, if you have a professional editor with you beforehand, your book is solid. So when you're getting that call, you're getting that call because your book is solid and you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, and not to, I don't want to go too far down this path too, but even like it does make me think there are sort of vanity
Mm-hmm.
publishers out there, and I know that that's not even probably the nicest of terms.
It's got
Um,
such a bad rap.
yeah, but I think that that's something to just be cognizant of as well and aware. And like you were saying, and like you also want the work that you're about to put out there to really be the best that you think it can be, and you don't want to have any sort of hesitation or any worry that maybe it's not. And so this is also your own reassurance, your own peace of mind. And so then I think that kind of leaves us with self-publishing as well, which, if you are going to self publish your book, and this is obviously applied to everybody else that we've talked about already, your first draft is not the book that should be published. I feel like that shouldn't have to be said, and yet I know that it does because I've had some recent conversations. Your book has to be edited. Like, please, 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 for
Mm.
you as a writer, like, please have your book edited.
Or you talk to
And
a writer and they're like, well, I edited as I went through. Or as I was writing, I was editing. And I was like, that's not how that works.
no, no, or they're like, oh, I ran it through Grammarly. Mm,
No.
no, nope, 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 nope.
I even recently ran my book through Marlowe. So Marlowe is a new AI editing tool. It's a program, and you put your book in it, and it's developed by a best-selling author. And I actually like really like this author. She's great. Tori. She writes wonderful thrillers on Amazon. But she partnered with the author who wrote Breaking the Bestseller Code, and basically establishing like if you, all books on the bestseller list have these 10 things, right? And so, and we kind of talked about this when we were talking about during the writing process, like how to write a bestseller. So go back and check that episode. But I finally put my book through her program, and even that, like it really like it gave me some insight to certain things, but it was still very surface level. I was a little disappointed actually. I thought it was going to really like thought the AI was going to be a little bit more powerful, but they developed it right when it came out. So I'm thinking that maybe they'll come up with an upgrade, and how that goes, and maybe it'll be a little bit better. But you just AI programs, you got to take everything like that with a grain of salt, especially when you're self-publishing, because it will be cheaper and it will be quicker. And so when you are trying to get through this process quicker and you don't have as much money, you will rely on those AI programs. They're good to a point, but you've got to have that human soul, that human interaction, because you got to remember your reader is human, and they're going to need that human connection. That's why AI will never take over writing, by the way.
I I think when it comes to AI, I think you're right. As a self-publisher, especially, it's probably really easy to try to do that and try to keep things affordable. And I would just say to exercise a lot of caution when it comes to almost anything in the AI space, or even if you're not self-publishing and you are going to be looking at querying like this in this space specifically, AI, there are a lot of opinions on it, and I think there's a lot to be cautious about. So, yeah, do and to your point, sorry, I was also thinking about this. AI isn't, it's not human, and it learns from humans, but your book needs a human factor to it or multiple human factors. So I would just exercise extra caution when it comes to that. No matter how you've already put months, years into this, it probably seems like an easier path to go down. Um, Not exactly the same, but like I think back to an author I talked to a couple of months ago, and she actually talks a lot about AI. Her name's Amy Hendrickson. And but one thing she said specifically to me, and we talked a little bit about AI, but when she said this, it wasn't on that subject. She goes, there's merit in wrestling with your words and making them do what you want them to do and say what you want them to say. And
That's good.
I repeat it to myself almost every single week. Like it just plays on repeat in my head. And I think that that's a really, or at least for me and hopefully for other people, like it's a really, really strong takeaway that I've had not only in writing but in marketing too, that there is a lot of merit in just wrestling with that. And even, you know, you get feedback from beta readers initially, like there's merit in wrestling with what that feedback is, and then adjusting and making changes and updates and revisions that ultimately do what you want them to do and say what you want them to say without the assistance of an AI program.
Yes. And so with self-publishing, that editing process, I think it really, you've got to set aside time for that. Like you've got to say, okay, once I finish writing because a lot of self-publishers are, I know, they're doing it for two reasons. I want to keep control and I want to get this done quick. Like I have a timeline that I'm trying to stick with. Bank in that timeline for editing. A typical edit can take 3 to 6 weeks for some editors. So, yeah, I know, right? Depending on how backed up they are and like how quickly you get the turnaround. And that doesn't even account for the time that you're spending going back and fixing the book. So, like, I recently, I just completed a round of edits. It took her 3 weeks. She sent it back. That might take me 6 weeks to implement those edits. If I'm working full time and I'm a mom full time, or I'm, working two jobs potentially, because let's be honest, at this point, this writer is not getting paid. Um, you are not getting paid at this point. So you've got to have some kind of job, some kind of something else you're doing. So it's going to take a lot of time to implement those changes too, but you've got to just set that time aside when you're booking out. Okay, how long? Don't plan a month for editing. It's going to take probably 6. Like, let's just be realistic, how we always are. And especially with self-published, you're going to want a developmental edit. You're going to want to know, where are my holes, where are my big problems that people are going to put the book aside and just be like, nah, that didn't do it for me. Like, a regular reader might not be able to figure out what the problem is, but like it's in the developmental stage.
yeah, that didn't do it for me. That isn't realistic, or it doesn't seem possible to. I mean, that's I think that that's one thing too, and I've had people question me on this before too, and they're like, well, it's fiction, like you get to make it up. I'm like, yeah, but the reader still has to see the connection. They have to see, okay, yeah, that tracks, that makes sense, or and then, oh, I missed that back, but you left me that little clue there. So you have to put in those thoughts, and a lot of that happens with some of the editing too, or it at least exposes where those gaps are, where those holes are. Otherwise you're going to lose that reader. So yeah, the developmental edit is, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
so important.
So, dirty little secret of mine, I have a YA book that I published. And it is a true, y'all, it was so long ago, and it is a true self-published book. Nobody edited this book. The only person who read it before I published it was my aunt, and she said her only comment was, it was really good. And that was the only feedback I got from her.
You put that on the back of the book too. Quote, it was really good. My aunt.
The whole reason I was publishing this book was for my third grade students. You know, we had kind of like put this book idea together, and they really wanted to see it come to fruition. So I secretly self-published it, and I never tell anybody about it because it is very poorly written. Because I never had an editor, I never had other eyes on it. And I had somebody read it and they said something to me. They're in the middle of reading it, right? They're like, oh my gosh, I'm just so excited. Like, what are the glowing eyes in the forest? Like, I can't wait to figure out what that is. And I was like, you're going to be waiting because I forgot about that and I never rocked back around to the glowing eyes in the forest.
I think you ponder that, come up with your own story for
I
those.
know. I was like, oh my gosh, that's really embarrassing. Like I
No,
said, do
I
not
love
open
that
that book.
story. Like I love what you did for your class though. I think it's so sweet. So I you shouldn't be embarrassed. You shouldn't be embarrassed.
But I should have, if I had more time, I would have done so much more with that book. And sometimes people really like it and they're like, "Hey, we want because it's one part of the series." Honestly, because I ran out of time. I was like, "I got to wrap this up. I don't have time to finish this book anymore." They were graduating 5th grade and I had to get it out there. So I was like, "We'll just end it here and I'll play it at like a series."
Haven't people asked you to add
They
like
had they
other
had been asked me to
content?
like go back and like continue the series and I'm like, I mean, I've started writing the second book a couple of times because I really do love the concept. It's a total ripoff of Twilight, by the way. Um, total ripoff. But that's how I present it to everyone. And then everybody, when I say that, they're like, if they know Twilight, they're like, I'll buy it right now. I'm like, okay. But I actually am starting to run into the younger crowd. They're like, what's Twilight? And I was like, seriously, how do you not know Twilight?
No.
It's like not
Um,
knowing Harry Potter. You're like, wait, what? How
I
do you not know
I
that?
will say I do see that feedback a lot though, and that's just not to scare anybody, but the review, you don't want your book to come out no matter how you went publishing wise. The review you don't really want is love the concept, but dot dot dot.
Hmm. Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong, like your book's not going to be for everybody and you should expect a 1 star, and like we've said before on other episodes, that's when you've made it, is when you
Yes.
get a 1 star. But I do think there is, sometimes there is something behind that statement of I love the concept, but. And a lot of that comes down to the developmental edit, not your writing or anything like that. It comes down to the developmental edit.
Yes. So do not skip that part. And it will be the most expensive part of the editing too. They charge the most.
It'll be the most expensive. You will question everything about your book. You will question everything about yourself as a writer. In the midst of it, you will probably have moments of regret.
Yes, you will be like, do I really want to publish this book? I don't even know anymore.
I don't think so. But you have to push through it. You have to push through it. And on the other side of it, there you will feel so much better for it. And you will get really close with that editor and they will help you make your story be the best that it can be. We've said this before too, like being an author it sounds really lonely to people that are outside of the industry, but it truly does take a team and it takes a village to get that book published. And the editing process is often where you are building crucial members of that team.
Yes. And also, too, like this process, if you're doing, no matter what level of publishing you decide to do, if you develop a relationship with an editor and you really like how they edit your work, using them for every book can really create such a great consistency over your entire brand as an author. So that's also something to consider when you're tossing around, do I want my own editor or do I want to wait and have a publisher supply me with one, and that kind of stuff. But after that developmental edit, you are not done. You, as a self published author, I also think that you should 100% do a line edit. You should 100% do a copy edit. And proofreading is probably the most inexpensive. And if you're like, I'm broke, I'm a writer, I don't have any money to put into this book, for the love of God, please have a proofread. So you're not embarrassed. I mean, like, you don't have misspelled words or like, because Grammarly, everyone's like, well, I love Grammarly. I use Grammarly. And I'm like, look, Grammarly doesn't always know because it tries to, I'm such a bad speller that it will take my misspelled word and give me the totally wrong word. Like, instead of complete, it's like compensate. I'm like, oh, no, that's not the word I meant.
That doesn't work there. No.
Yeah.
Um, it is. I mean, that's why we started the series or started the show talking about really like what your expectations should be, and we get that it's definitely hard as a self-published author specifically. There is certainly a financial commitment to it, but setting that aside for this editing process is so important for your book. And I don't know. That's really all that there is to it. Like I don't know
Yeah,
that we can emphasize that like much more.
I know. It's just so incredibly important. And that's why I think that this series is going to be really important to be a part of and follow. And why we, again, if we don't skip it in the series, then like you definitely shouldn't skip that part of the process. But yeah.
So what's coming up next?
Okay, so I'm really excited. So the next episode, we're going to be talking to my friend Kate Hendrickson, and she is a self-publishing author. Her book is coming out November 4th. It's a Christmas read, and I was actually one of the editors on her project, and I did a little author coaching with her as well. She's fabulous. But we really talked a lot about what route she wanted to go. And when she picked self publishing, something I was so strong with her about was two things. Like, you've got to get the right editing. That is so incredibly important. And please call my girl Emma and have her do a professional book cover. Do not make one on Canva. That's like, do not do that. We were talking about that process as well. But I'm really excited to talk to her because she has been through that process of hunting an editor from scratch. Like, hunting down those beta readers, finding her community because she's a first time author. And when you're a first time author, it's really hard to find these spaces out the gate. And you really have to rely on anybody you know in the industry. Like, I'm a thriller writer, like, I'm nowhere near Christmas, but I have friends who are in Christmas, so I can like connect her. So it's like leaning on anybody you can. So I'm excited for us to get to talk to her and kind of see what that process looks like for a self published author.
That's going to be such a good episode, and you guys are going to cover so much in that conversation.
So, well, don't forget to tune in 2 weeks for that next episode. Make sure that you are following us on Spotify and Amazon. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and our Substack newsletter for all the extra tips and links.